Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now today, I want to explore the world of EdTech, or education technology, and how it's not a substitute for teachers, but a tool that complements their abilities and helps them help their students. And I recently discovered a company called Amira Learning, which is the world's first AI-powered reading tutor. And they appeared on my radar when Amira and the StoryCraft were named one of Time's 100 best inventions of 2021. And they were only one of 3 inventions that were honoured in the education category. And that list did feature 100 products and services that ultimately changed the way we live, play, work, and think about the future. It's a great list, but I wanted to hear more about this EdTech solution. So I invited Mark Angel onto the podcast to share his story, Amira's mission, AI technology, and the path that led to them appearing in Time magazine. But more than anything, the difference that they're making with technology and helping to transform the lives of students. And of course, the kind of feedback that they've been getting from parents and educators. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California, where Mark is waiting to speak with us now. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Mark. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Mark Angel. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at Amira Learning. I lead the team that created Amira, and before that, I've been in EdTech for a long time. I was the chief technology officer at a large digital software company called Renaissance Learning that produces the most widely used reading applications in U.S. schools.
Excellent. And you have had a fantastic career in tech. And I'm quite interested in how the worlds of education and technology collided for you. So to go there, I suppose what we've got to do is find out more about your origin story. Can you remember where your passion for technology came from? What lit that spark and what put you on this path?
Sure. So it was a long, long time ago. And when I started with computers and technology, it was pretty early days. In fact, my first programming was back in the fog of punch cards and paper tape, and long before probably most of the listeners had any encounter with digital technology. And I just immediately fell in love with the power of the computer to generate numbers and insights so quickly. I happened to be at a university, the University of Chicago, that did a lot of social science research, and I was interning at a place called the National Opinion Research Center, and learned very quickly that the programming process let us turn what had once been very hard to understand and parse reams of survey and survey research data into very, very understandable crosstabs and regression models, and shed a lot of light. And from that point forward, never looked back on kind of really using software to put a light on decision making and make it a lot easier to understand big piles of data.
Wow, I absolutely love that. And of course, it was that path that led you to build the first of its kind voice AI-based reading tutor for kids. So can you tell me a bit more about Amira Learning and the story behind the company and those problems that you wanted to solve with technology? Because I would imagine to begin with, there was slight resistance in the education sector from technology, but those memories just seem to be well gone now, don't they?
Last year has eradicated any concerns about the need for more technology in the classroom and the value of connecting kids digitally and online. But yeah, Amira was born for probably the best possible reason, which is that we've tried for decades to use conventional teaching methods to help every student become an early reader And it has failed, especially here in the United States. Our kind of national testing shows that even by fourth grade, 2 out of every 3 students are not proficient readers. And the long-term research has shown that when we can't help a student to become a good reader and to love reading early on, it affects them for the rest of their lifetime. Poor readers in third grade are multiple times more likely to drop out, have about 40% less career earnings. So when we can't help a student to become a fluent reader early in their lifetime, we set them up for failure. And what the team at Amira saw is that neither the traditional kinds of teaching methods nor the software that had been available were moving the needle. The scores hadn't budged in 40 years. And there's not very many indicators of good life or progress that haven't changed in 4 decades, right? So what we wanted to do was to try to build something that would take dead aim at those statistics and really put technology into a position that had never been before, which is an indispensable tool for parents and teachers who are working with kids who are 5 to 9 years old. And those are kids precisely because they can't read, precisely because many of them are struggling, can't bang away at conventional user interfaces, and who can't read a lot of instructions on the screen. And we decided that the time had come when we could use voice and speech recognition and AI techniques to really do something different. So that was Amira's genesis.
And what I love about that, the phrase you used there, that this is a great tool for teachers. And I think very often when we see headlines around artificial intelligence, it's going to take my job, it's going to replace teachers. But that's not the case at all. It's having that tool set, isn't it?
You are dead on, Neil. What we know globally and in the United States is that we have a crying shortage for teachers, and that's not going to change. We need more teachers. We need more great teachers. But I come from a long background in using artificial intelligence and natural language processing. I started out doing those things on Wall Street. I'm still paying penance for that. But what we see is that almost every knowledge worker, every sophisticated deliverer of value has become deeply technology enabled over time. You'll never catch a Wall Street trader without him staring into the Bloomberg. You'll never go into a contact center anymore or walk into a doctor's office without seeing digital enablement. But we have not done that for our teachers, and they need it most of all. So our kind of exact mission is to help teachers have the kind of information, insight, and assistance that every other knowledge worker has benefited from at this point. And we're just a complement. We're not a substitute.
And I love that. I love what you're doing there as well. And I'm curious, though, did your previous experience working at, I think it was Nuance, which MSFT recently acquired for $19 billion. How did that help you bring Amira Learning to life?
It's a great question. Speech recognition, like so much of AI, has been on a long-term journey. It takes time and it takes mountains of data before we can get machine learning models to converge on goodness. And when we started at Nuance, we were focused on adult speech. We were focused on adult speech initially in the most pristine kind of situation where we would ask people to read John Kennedy's inaugural address so we could train the models just on their voice. And be very specific. And we went on a multi-year journey where we went from speaker-dependent speech to speaker-independent speech to speech that could kind of handle general conversation. And that journey laid the groundwork for Amira. It allowed us to develop machine learning techniques and techniques for collecting data that we can use today for kids. But as you might expect, speech recognition for a 5-year-old is even tougher than for typical adults. So we needed every bit of that experience and learning to get Amira to work.
And we will have parents and educators listening all over the world. So a lot of them will be hearing about Amira for the first time. So can you just walk me through how Amira works and your mission to make every child motivated and that masterful reader?
Yeah, so Amira is modeled after the way we know children learn to read. Most of us probably learn to read because some adult, sometimes a teacher, sometimes a parent, sat us down right next to them, and we opened up a book and we started to read. And when we struggled, that adult helped us out and scaffolded our weak spots and helped us to understand the story. And that model of one-to-one tutoring is exactly how Amira works. Basically, Amira opens up the digital book, the student reads, Amira listens. As the student needs help, either hesitates or makes a mistake or asks for assistance, Amira jumps in with all kinds of exercises, scaffolding, assistance to build their skills. And that's the process. Now, the one thing that happens is that as Amira is doing that tutoring, Amira is also assessing what the student knows and doesn't know, and then can report that back to the teacher and the parent so that they can lend a helping hand to build the skills that the student is working on right there. So it's as simple as that. It's really about a guided practice process where Amira does the personalized tutoring that we know moves the needle.
And a question I've got to ask, especially because we're talking about artificial intelligence here, obviously there's over 50 states in the US where accents are very different. Here in the UK, you literally have to travel 15 miles and an accent will completely change. And it's like that all over the world. Is it difficult? Is that your biggest challenge to understand those different regional accents?
It is. We have two challenges. Yeah. That's one. There is significant variance, as you indicate, in how students articulate English. Amira is all about English, so we don't yet have to cope with very across languages, but the variation in accent and dialect and speaking style globally and in the United States is immense. And this is where, frankly, a better word for what we do in this regard is machine learning, because Amira literally is trained against sample audio. And so what we have to do is have samples of audio with lots of kids with lots of different accents and dialects. And then as our machine learning models see those examples, the software is able to understand that particular accent. So it's a never-ending process of seeing new students with a new way of talking and retraining. Our other big challenge, though, is that turns out reading is tough, especially for certain kinds of kids. I think most of us has become familiar in the last few years with dyslexia and the potential that dyslexia has to even make really, really smart children struggle with reading. It turns out that dyslexia is only one of many reading and language disorders, and that there are a number of ways that the brain, which isn't really adapted for reading, can resist fluency. So our second big challenge is to help children who don't adapt to the reading process very easily and give them the explicit, incredibly systematic instruction that they need to overcome those deficits. So, yeah.
Excellent. And if we have a teacher listening that goes into their school tomorrow, said, I heard a great podcast, this is just the solution that we're looking for, starts a conversation with the IT director and the techies who are straight away going to say, well, how does it do that? What's the technology? For those people that want to know how it works, what goes on under the hood, can you tell me a little bit more about the tech that makes it possible?
Well, first, on the surface, it looks like a standard web application. Amira's accessed through the browser, so you can use pretty much any kit, whether it's an iPad or a Chromebook or a standard PC. You can pretty much open up any browser and surf to the Amira site, and the student logs in just like any other application. But from there, things start to take a very different turn. The student basically encounters an avatar. That's Amira. And Amira's a young lady who basically conducts a conversation and has a dialogue with that student. And you can sort of see Amira as a stack of artificial intelligence and machine learning. At the top of the stack is the speech recognition that we've talked about. Just below it are capabilities that allow Amira to emulate some of the judgment that teachers make. Teachers have to know when a student's really making a reading error and isn't just sort of, slightly mispronouncing or making a careless kind of throwaway. So the second kind of part of the AI is a classification approach along the lines that some of the machine learning in healthcare uses to classify benign and malignant tumors. Amira has to classify real reading mistakes from just slips of the tongue and innocent stuff. And then below that is more AI that helps Amira to understand the root cause of where a student's going wrong. And this is where Amira is approved by many governmental agencies as an official screener for dyslexia, because the software is really good at finding the patterns that lead students to struggle. And finally, there's a lot of more conventional software that helps Amira to produce reports and information back to teachers and parents. So that's the core idea. People often say, sounds complicated. It is pretty complicated. Amira has been a function of research and development that spanned 30 years. So software first began its life at Carnegie Mellon University in 1992. So Amira is a process of 30 years of research.
And of course, with any tech solution, and no matter how great the tech is, it's all about adoption and does it solve any problems for people? So I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you received from parents, educators, and even students? Do you get to hear any stories there?
Well, we do. And not only that, the best part of my day and life is going into schools and sitting next to kids as they're using software. And a lot of the team at Amira, that's a big part of our day. And it's incredibly rewarding. But yeah, we've been on a really accelerated journey. I think everybody knows it's hard to get uptake with new technology in schools. And I've had that personal experience about how rightly cautious educators are. But notwithstanding that caution, Amira is in its third year in schools, and we now have about 400,000 students using the software. 48 states, 6 countries. We have millions of minutes of students reading with Amira every month now. Our usage has just exploded again this fall. So we've been really, really gratified by the response. And obviously the software has found a big need. What we hear from the kids is Amira's nice, and they like the fact that they have a very safe place to practice their reading. What we hear from teachers is that Amira is just something that has made a big difference for them in their classrooms. We hear a lot about how much time it saves and how different the kind of insight and information we're able to give them than anything they've had before. So,
and you mentioned there 48 states, 6 countries. I'm curious, just from a Brit, is the UK one of those countries?
Not yet. We want to come. But yeah, so we've stayed pretty close to the Americas just because of the does run in the cloud. And so when we access it in either EMEA or Asia Pacific, the hops between the user and our data centers in the United States create some issues. But our plans next year to locate Amira in the UK and over in India and to be able to have more local access for folks who want to use it in both places.
Awesome. Maybe I know a guy that knows a guy. You never know. But you mentioned that's obviously going to be a big focus. Is there anything else that you can share about what's going to be your big focus in 2022 and what's next for you guys?
Yeah, well, one a very big focus for us is making Amira more and more accessible outside of school hours and giving parents and grandparents the ability to use Amira from an at-home perspective. So what we've seen is just a lot of demand in these COVID times and just in general to put Amira's power to work outside of the classroom and outside of the school dynamics. So this is going to be our number one focus. We just recently launched Amira at Home, and Time Magazine called it one of their best inventions of 2021. So it's a big goal for us to get the kind of uplift and usage that we're seeing in schools at home as well.
That's amazing. Well, I wish you the best of luck for the future. But before I let you go, we started this podcast talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. Now I'm going to have a bit of fun with you and ask you, what was the soundtrack to that origin story? Is there a song or piece of music that inspires you or helps you get out of bed in the morning? Whatever it may be, I'm sure you've got a song and story for us.
Yeah, so I'm a big Beatles fan, and I have to say the Amira story goes hand in hand with Imagine, because we've tried really hard to imagine a different kind of place for students to read, in a different world where kids, regardless of their background and situation, have access to the kind of assistance that turns their life into a life of opportunity. So.
Wow, what a beautiful song and a great choice, and a reason for that choice too. But before I let you go, for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about Amira Learning, maybe there's a school somewhere, a parent, or even a student, what is the best way of finding you online and reaching out and contacting your team?
Come to AmiraLearning.com, and there's all kinds of resources there. If desired, just give us a shout. There's ways to reach out and contact us either by chat or email, and we'd love to have a conversation. So.
Well, what I've loved more than anything today, yes, we've talked about Amira's mission, AI technology and initiatives that you've achieved to date, etc. But more than anything, it's your very human story. And something that I always say on this podcast is technology works best when it brings people together. And you're teaching kids how to read that couldn't read before. And is anything more beautiful than that? So thank you so much for taking the time to share your story and everything that you're doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil, for giving us the time. Much appreciated. So have a great one.
Wow, what an amazing story, and a well-deserved end to 2021 for Mark and his team there by being named one of Time's 100 best inventions of 2021. And not only is it a great story, I think Mark is a great guy. He's got a real cool vibe about him. And as I said a few moments ago, technology works best when it brings people together. And the way this technology is bringing teachers and struggling students together and helping them overcome the challenges that they're encountering, and the kind of feedback that they're getting from educators, the students themselves, and the parents is phenomenal. So I'm going to be following this project very closely. I will be staying in touch with Mark. Hope to get him back on in the next year or so, see how that journey's going. But over to you. How are you seeing technology being used in the right way in education? There are a lot of good examples out there. There are some not so good examples out there, but I'd love to hear about them, how it's affected you or your students. And I'd love to get your story shared on this show too. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. If you'd like to work with me or browse through 2,000 other podcast interviews, simply pop by my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. But I am conscious I've taken up far too much of your time already, so I will return again tomorrow. I'll be lingering in your podcast feed with another interview ready to go. But a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.